have this button open the whole time and you're not saying anything. It's horrible.
Join us as we dive into the latest strategies and insights to help your business stay ahead. Let's get started. Let's get started.
Okay, mister. I actually did prepare like a little intro, man.
Echt waar?
Yeah, and I think you will go with the flow, to be honest.
Oké, go for it.
Yeah?
Ga je wel even zeggen welkom bij de introductie van de Dubrink?
Well,
Of bij de podcast van Dubrink?
We will do that.
Okay.
We'll do that. But I think it makes sense for us, to address the elephant in the room. Like, why are we actually wanted to bring an elephant, like an inflatable elephant. We had a little call yesterday. I was like, can we not find an inflatable elephant? But we did not find an inflatable elephant in time. But the elephant in the room is the fact that two Dutch people are going to speak in English for this podcast, which is a little bit strange.
Mm-hmm.
But, we are in the end addressing an international crowd, I guess. So it does make sense, and it's just a little bit more international.
Yeah.
I guess now you can actually properly introduce yourself. So.
Welcome to the Dubrink podcast about CBAM. Enjoy. For the viewers who have no clue what is CBAM actually, what is CBAM? What is the carbon border adjustment mechanism?
Yeah, so the carbon border adjustment mechanism is basically a way to level the playing field for importers or essentially for companies bringing material into Europe. If you're producing, let's say, aluminium right now in the Netherlands or anywhere in Europe for that matter, it's quite strict in terms of emissions, what you can emit. There's a lot of regulations about that. You have to buy rights to be able to justify those emissions. But right now, you can also just take them from anywhere outside of Europe and pretty much you don't have to play by those rules. And that's kind of what CBAM is trying to do. It's trying to level that playing field and bring, the emissions to a more level playing field.
Because in a way it's not fair, right? If you have a factory in Europe and you're producing aluminium or aluminum, as the Americans say, and you try to do it as green as possible, then it's not fair that someone from China, a factory and we have seen some factories which are very, very polluting, that you can just import the same material for a cheaper price because they don't have to spend anything on greening their factory.
Exactly.
And CBAM is kind of helping with that, and you need to now pay a price for the carbon you're emitting, and that price is going up, up, up.
Absolutely.
In such a way that if you don't do anything about it, that is going to be so expensive that is going to be troublesome for your business, right?
Absolutely. And of course, there's already some larger players that are in the ESG space that are impacted by this. Because ESG, there's these three scopes, scope 1 and 2, which are more about the internal organization, scope 3, really more on the external organization. It's then split in, let's say, freight or transport cost, and on the other side, basically emissions on goods. And that's essentially what CBAM is. Yeah. Except that for CBAM, the threshold is very low. It's €150. So anytime you're importing anything within the CN codes, the import good codes, that hits that limit, you're subject to it. So the scope for ESG, that's very large companies. Yeah. CBAM, however, it's pretty much everyone. If you're bringing screws in, importing something from China for less than €150 worth of material is not even worth the trouble anyway with the transport costs. So anyone taking materials from China or anywhere outside of Europe for that matter are impacted by
European Union.
Exactly, yeah.
That is with respect to aluminium, steel, iron, cement, hydrogen, electricity, and fertilizer, right? And
exactly,
if I look into legislation and plans, you can see that in the future they might add ceramics, glass, it could be even plastic. What would that imply, for example, if you want to order your stuff from Alibaba? Is that still going to be the same situation?
I mean, drop shipping is certainly going to be impacted. I guess, what's very interesting about the way the CBAM regulation is set up is that originally it kind of applies to raw material. You're bringing in, tubes or big unwrought aluminium, and you bring it into a factory to somehow do further processing within Europe. But actually, we have some customers that are end products. They're bringing end products into the European Union, into Italy in this particular case, and they're also subject to it. So it's not only raw material, and of course, the vast majority, 95% of the codes, the import codes that are impacted, those are really raw materials. But a small percentage of it is finished products. And sooner or later, that's probably going to be expanded. And then they might pick up other areas. Like you said, ceramics. Ceramics is also something that in the UK CBAM regulation, they're probably going to include. Yeah, then it's gonna get very interesting, because now, the pan, I bought new pans for my house recently, and they're all made out of, CBAM materials. Yeah. They're produced within Europe, but somewhere those materials are sourced, and that's probably not from within Europe. So that pan, are you gonna pay the same? Are you willing to pay, I don't know, 200% more for that same pan? That's the impact.
And then practically, right, it is an importer which has an import, actually requests the data to the supplier. And the supplier needs to provide the data on what kind of emissions are in the product, correct, what kind of emissions are emitted during with respect to the electricity, but also you need to look into the precursors, meaning that there's a product which is a CBAM good, but if you use CBAM goods to eventually produce that product, you also need to calculate what the emissions are. And when we looked into that and we realized how difficult and complicated this is, and that you have to do that with a pretty complicated Excel sheet, and that is going to be kind of hard for importers, but also suppliers to do that, that's where we saw a solution, and we realized we can help companies to do it. Because the big ones, they have these big software packages, right? ESG packages, they are fine. But the 90% who doesn't have to report that,
ESG,
they have a big issue with CBAM, because we thought when we started this company that everybody in this field would be, how to say, tree hugging. Can I say that? Where everybody would be super pro CBAM.
Pro green stuff to begin with.
But is that what we experienced?
Actually, kind of the opposite. It depends a little bit, because our business is split in multiple sides. But I think from the importer side, we find a lot of hesitation. There's a lot of why do we have to bring all this extra administration into the, into our job? We just want to produce metal. We just want to produce,
or import. I remember I had an importer from the Netherlands. And I texted him that we are going to do this company, that we're going to start with it. And then he looked into it. And I got a message 2 weeks later, and he said, Marcel, I'm already for 2 weeks looking into this legislation.
Absolutely.
I will need to hire 2-3 FTEs to manage this. This is horrible. What's happening? That's when we got together and we said hey, but if we can simplify this, and we can eventually, now it only takes 3 minutes to report your CBAM if you would use our software. We realized if we would build that's going to be a big solution. But when I start calling, because I did make a few hundred calls just to sense okay, is this
worth it even?
Yeah. People didn't respond as I actually expected.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Of course, like I said, right, there's multiple sides to the business. There's also the suppliers. We spoke to quite a lot of suppliers, Turkish, Jordanian, of course, some Chinese as well. China is quite proactive in this. They have a very strong, similar to the trading scheme that we have within Europe. They have something of their own. They're kind of all right, we kind of understand this, we know this. Countries like Jordan, they have absolutely no clue. Some countries are just not that proactive in this kind of stuff, I guess. We spoke to some Canadian consultants. They are leading the green, what do you call it, green wave, I guess. So they are kind of used to that, but then the calculations are nothing like what they've done before. So the CBAM regulation, this is for the viewers out there, CBAM regulation does not follow typical greenhouse gas calculations. It has its own methodologies, and it's using really not necessarily specifically crafted for this purpose, but it is not your standard run-of-the-mill, GHG, greenhouse gas inventory calculation. You have to actually study that material and familiarize yourself with it before you start doing CBAM. what else is something that you would want to bring up? Because there's so much we can talk about.
Yeah.
This is like we've prepared this whole list. This is all questions and topics that are of interest. But
what are the big complications you see? Where do people get stuck? Because
what side?
we have experienced people really get stuck. They call us and they say, how should I solve this? I mean, our platform does the requesting of the information. It calculates it. It stores it. Soon it will validate it. And we actually make that all the imports are being put into one XML file. You drag and drop it into the European Commission and they're done. But there's still much more than that.
You make a very quick jump there, because that's something that perhaps not everybody even understands.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
if you go and actually, if you have to do CBAM, if CBAM applies to you, let me put it like that. So you are importing a couple of containers of aluminum material, for example, every year. Very small importer in terms of the market. The way it works is you got to send a communication template. This is literally, I've done a lot of consulting. Consultants love Excel files typically. We've done a lot of Excel files. This is literally the most complicated Excel file we've ever dealt with, right?
But you should see what I've seen in Unilever, but never mind.
I guess what it is, but I had a simpler life, I guess. But this is the point. So you send this Excel sheet, and the Excel sheet applies to every sector. So you send that to your metal producer, who may actually not be the producer. You just think that he's actually the guy producing that, but maybe it's a trader, maybe it's a distributor. Yeah, so there's all kinds of complexities within that. But let's say we skip past that and it actually ends up in the factory that produces it. They now have to fill this out. They have to send it back to you, hoping it's correct, right? Because there's no real validation in the Excel sheet.
They need to go to their sub-suppliers.
The supplier,
or maybe even their sub-suppliers.
Exactly. So the supplier has to include all their sub-suppliers' data, include that in the data collection, send it back to you, and then at the end of the quarter, you basically have to collect all those Excel sheets, and you have to drop the information that's basically, in one of the pages of the sheet, and enter them into the transitional registry is what they call it. It's the European portal. That's basically what you have to do today. And we're like, well, this is ridiculous. Is there not a faster way? Is there not a better way? There is a better way. And the way it works for us, right? Like you add your imports, the goods that you've imported. Then you, like Marcel said, you connect to the supplier. They can connect to their sub-suppliers. And then at the end of the quarter, we accumulate all that data and we just generate a file that you can drag and drop into the portal, the transitional registry, and that basically pre-fills all the fields, so you don't have to do anything else. So it makes it much more accessible. What was your question? Because
I know, and to be honest, we're pretty proud on that.
Because, 100%. Yeah, this is cool stuff.
Because entrepreneurship is fun, but now we're literally in a situation that consultants come to us, they work with our software, and they say, I have seen several platforms, but this is working. Multiple precursors, importers, exporters, integrating with each other. Consultants actually, because maybe that's interesting how we see consultants, right? You often see that platforms do also consultancy, but we don't do consultancy. We would be able to do that, but we're a software house.
It's funny because at the very beginning, we were like, we're going to become CBAM consultants. That was, let's say, the first 2-3 months of us evaluating this as an opportunity, as a business opportunity. Does it make sense to become a CBAM consultant? We'll just study the material, go into the factory, and just offer that stuff. In the end, we realized, well, we're still going to run into the same problem. We're still going to have to, because everything that we just described about this flow of exchanging documents, it's complicated as it is. But let's say that we're dealing with one supplier, it's manageable. Yeah. But now look at the actual supply chain. You may get your materials from 20, 30 different suppliers, right? And now you got to do this whole exercise, and the supplier has to do their exercise with all these sub-suppliers times 20. So the complexity is actually even more, it's much more complex than what I just described, but that's insane, And the consultants, they really play a role in that because, first of all, they have the relationships with...
On two sides, actually, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's obviously the ones in Europe they have the relationship with the importers. Maybe they're already helping them collect these Excel sheets.
Or make them understand how CBAM works.
Exactly. Sometimes they validate the Excel sheets because, to be honest, some of the data that's being sent back, it just does not make sense.
No.
And like I said, there is no sense checking in the Excel.
Yeah.
So what are they going to do, right? I think that's a
They
topic.
sense check it with our software.
They do, yeah, absolutely. No, this is not even, it's not a sales pitch for the software. It's we're actually trying to show the pain points, and people should make their own decision. Like what we say, like us, cool. Have a look, book a meeting, and we're happy to show you the software. And I think it's also very important to say that a lot of the other tooling that we've seen, it sometimes costs upwards of, a small car.
Yeah. Why is it so expensive? It's not necessary, right?
It doesn't have to be the price of a car. I don't want to sound like I'm promoting communism, because I'm not. Because I really am a capitalist. Let me drive my point home. But I do think that if you take that price of a small car and you can somehow divide it among multiple players that are part of the same ecosystem, consultants on the importer side, consultants on the third country side, of course, the software provider, perhaps a third party that's going to do validation, right? And you distribute that, not even fairly, like I said, not communism, but you do distribute that small car worth of fees that otherwise would go to a single party. I think you're making it much simpler. You're making the whole ecosystem much more transparent, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. Because sharing is in that way multiplying, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You have the consultants on the side of the factory. They are actually using our software for free, the consultant and the factories. The factories ask the consultants to explain CBAM and often to put the data from the factory into our system, or even to get the data to help with measuring, etc. Then eventually there's a fee for our platform. And on the other hand, you have the consultants here in the Netherlands. They are helping the importers, and the importers pay a small fee. I mean, on average, I think it's maybe 40, 50 euros per month.
If you're a small-time importer, that's what you would expect it to cost, you know? And of course, you're still probably going to have to pay someone that's going to help you either explain you the software, or explain you just generally like what is going on, like what is CBAM? You've never heard of that stuff. And then as the regulation changes, you still need to pay someone to advise you on that. Yeah. So it's not that, you just pay that and then it's done, but at least it won't cost you the price of a small car.
And eventually you end up with like a few cents, right, per import. And
exactly.
On a whole container of aluminium, that's
exactly.
not,
But it is perhaps interesting to mention as well, on one hand, you mentioned customers in the Netherlands. We started in the Netherlands because obviously we have a tactical advantage because we're Dutch speakers, so we can just like speak to our fellow Dutch people and just bond like that. But then things started to take kind of an interesting turn, and obviously we're in Prague, which is less of an import-driven nation, not as much as the Netherlands is, but just in Czech Republic alone, there's 5,500 companies, and actually that's something I wanted to bring up as well. The national competent authorities, the customs offices, basically, those are initially the ones that have to inform the importers about the import. CBAM is now something that you have to follow, at least here. And even some of the customers that we spoke to in the Netherlands, that's not even happening in most of the cases. So these importers find out way too late. They found out way too late. It's just a mess, man.
And the reason really why that's troublesome is because at the moment you only need to report your CBAM, right? Yeah. From 2026, you will have to start paying penalties if you don't report your emissions correctly, right? And you have to start buying certificates.
Yeah. So the cost is actually on multiple sides. There's the infrastructure, which we provide. There is the consultant that will explain how things work. There's the validation part, someone that's going to make sure that the data you've received is paid for. And then there's that. And it's a big topic. And there's really not that many people yet aware of how big of a topic this is. Take that example of the pan. Like you go to a shop, you buy a pan. Now look at that same product and just imagine that stuff may come from China. That raw material may come from wherever, Vietnam, and it may just be 400% more expensive if all the fees add up.
Yeah. I talk with parties and they say like, look, my prices are going to go ×4, sometimes even ×10. It's gonna change things. However, when I see sometimes data from factories, it's so pollutionous that I believe that's really bad. When you buy such a pen, you don't realize that sometimes. I mean, I was driving my car recently, and I saw a car in front of me, and there was all this kind of black smoke coming out. Right? I was smelling it. I was like, "That's disgusting. How can you still do that?" Right? But factories are in the way the same. You have factories with a lot of black smoke, and you have factories who are capturing the emissions, and they try to do everything to keep it clean, right? And I think that's where a big difference is. When you buy something, you don't see how it is produced, and that's gonna change.
Yeah,
how it will evolve, I don't know. I'm not in politics. I don't care, but there's something gonna happen.
And it's interesting because I told you, like, at the very beginning of this journey, it's like, well, I have this customer, they're looking into CBAM, and it's kind of a big thing, man. I think we need to do something with it. And then around the same time, I remember you sent me a screenshot of an update of your bank account, like a Dutch banking app.
Indeed, yeah.
And this is kind of shocking for us because, of course, we hear about like carbon budgets left and right, but actually our Dutch banking app, his Dutch banking app, I don't have any anymore, but it actually has room for your personal carbon budget in there. And it was like, interesting. How do you think they're going to do that? And obviously this is a way, right?
It's impossible to do that if you only track what you do within the European Union.
Correct.
You need to track the imports. And that's clearly where Europe is going these days.
Yeah.
Are we seeing any avoidance behavior in the market with CBAM? Or is everything going as it should go?
Yeah. No, there's actually a few ways that this is happening.
We shouldn't tell the ways, I guess. We should tell if it's happening or not.
Okay. Well, yeah, we see the avoidance, but I also don't want to leave it at just that, right? I think, and in some ways...
And the authorities are chasing it too, right?
100%. But I guess to a certain degree, consultants are also notorious about this, right? Because they're, the tax optimization people, their job is to optimize taxes. Now, CBAM, is it a tax? Is it not a tax? This is also a topic of discussion. But import specialists may be able to prove that the product that you're bringing into the country is actually perhaps not exactly that CN code, but it may be something else.
Yeah.
Maybe you can declare that it is made of a certain percentage of recycled material, therefore qualifies as recycled material. Maybe you can somehow change the country of origin. This is another thing that we see a lot. So yeah, there is ways. Recycling, number one, I guess, recycled material, in particular aluminium, it's a problem right now because it doesn't fall under CBAM, which in a sense makes it's kind of fair because it's already been paid for at some point. And like you said, they're pushing back as well. They're adapting the regulation. Now they're looking into, how can we tackle that, right? That exact thing. And then there is this really, really strange case where some products fall under it and some products don't. Like we have this chair manufacturer. This is the one that started this whole product. Their chairs have an aluminium base. That's 100% CBAM product essentially, but it's not a CBAM code because the CN code is not the same. So scope expansion, I think it's unavoidable because you want, how can you not care about emissions of aluminium products like that, but care about the emissions of aluminium products that are 95% the same, but they're not used in a chair, but they're used in, an umbrella or something else, right? So
yeah,
that's a topic as well.
If I would compare CBAM with a life, I actually think CBAM is a baby. I mean, it was created with a lot of love. A lot of people put a lot of effort in there because it's not an easy job to do this. And it's a very, very, very long-term project. I think it's important to mention that the fact that not everything goes exactly right from the first moment is because if a baby tries to walk, it will also fall maybe 100 times on its butt before it's able to walk. And what I do see is that step by step, CBAM is moving forward. Isn't it?
No, I think you're right. I think you are right.
So I see sometimes people mentioning certain things like this might not. They're just starting, and to be honest, just recently, I mean, this podcast is recorded in 2/24 August. Just recently, both the Dutch as the German authorities mentioned that if you are not able to get the exact data at the moment, but you need to work with default values. You need to clearly show that you really tried to get your emission data. That signals that the EU is not going to back down, that they will only push through. And that is also kind of maybe a warning to importers, maybe also exporters, that you shouldn't wait with preparing for CBAM till the last year, because it's too late.
Absolutely. And it's also this is even something that we haven't even discussed, but I do want to bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
It's actually very tricky, because when they speak about default values, what we're really talking about in terms of default values, we're talking about default emission values.
Yeah.
So basically, you have an iron product, and that iron product has some sort of standard emission, let's say taken over a large sample size. This is kind of the emission. That's essentially what default values are. But in order to do the report, the CBAM report, what's very important is you actually need to report a lot more than just the emission data. Where is the electricity coming from? Like, what is the primary source of electricity? But also information about the production process. Production process, as well as production method in iron production. Like, is it blast furnace, or is it smelted, and so on. So there's all kinds of additional data that needs to be collected. So even if and this is really a problem at this point, I think, because sure, you can use default values, or you could use default values, but at the same time, there's still a lot of data, there's a lot of information that you can't get from the default values, such as the production process, that you have to collect directly from the source.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, this is only going to get worse, because more information might be requested. What is the percentage of scrap in case of the recycled products, right? The way to address that is by adding these limitations to it. So more information is going to be requested. And even if you can use default values in a worst case scenario, it only solves about 20, 30, maybe 40% of the actual problem, because you still need to know, how did you produce that product? And that stuff you can only get from the real source, from that supplier.
Yeah. And apart from that, you also need to make sure that you collect the data properly, because sometimes I see 50 importers to one supplier. The supplier has like a whole, I would say almost, how do you call that? Not Christmas tree, but like a route of sub-suppliers and sub-suppliers. And you need to be able to collect that in a very smart way. And that's actually a little bit what our software does. I actually want to invite you to... Huh?
But you're like, do you call it a Christmas tree? But we actually internally do call it a Christmas tree, because that's what it resembles, It has the...
I think it's because in the Netherlands you call it a kerstboom.
I guess, but it's a Christmas tree, I guess. It's a tree for sure.
Yeah.
If it's a Christmas tree, that's debatable, but it surely is a tree to some degree.
Hey, can you explain how does our platform work? So,
sure.
What kind of components does it have? Who can log in? How? And what can you calculate?
Sure. Well, the platform has three sides to it. There's obviously the importer side. There's the supplier side. That's the most basic one. And then there's, of course, also a consultant side, which is a fundamental part of our business model, as we talked about earlier. So the importer kicks off a data request by basically creating an import, adding their CN codes. And we didn't really cover that earlier. We just spoke about goods code. The way it works is you have the HS system. It's like harmonic system, I believe. The harmonic system consists of CN codes or HS codes, 8 or 10, depending which one, digits long, and that kind of describes the product.
How are they called in Turkey?
No, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I'm not.
They're different in many countries. Huh?
Yeah, every country. That's why I'm confused, because in Dutch it's not even
because
called
soon,
HS.
how much languages the platform will be?
17.
17 languages. Good.
17, yeah. So that's actually also been an issue, like how do we get all the correct information in all languages?
Yeah.
Because the CN, there's PDFs available, but it's just...
Do you find a way? Not share.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me go back. So three sides to the platform. Importer side, they open an import and they basically attach all the goods that they're bringing into the European Union. And we're seeing two ways of using it, right? On one hand, you do it after the fact. You've imported some goods and you're requesting data for those goods. But the other way that people are using it is before you place a purchase order or before you purchase goods, you put it in our system, and then you kind of use it to get the information you need before you actually bring it into Europe.
Yeah.
Which is a second use case, I guess.
And just a sidestep, you can do that manually. You can do that with a CSV file.
Exactly.
And we are talking with some big companies at the moment. With them, we will just integrate it.
Yeah, and sometimes we're talking, like I said, a couple of containers a year. You're probably going to do that manually.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have it in a CSV file. That's fine as well. But on the other side of the spectrum, we're dealing with companies that do close to 20,000 lines, import lines, so individual codes per month.
Yeah.
And that kind of volume, if you got to do that manually, then you don't save any time at all.
Yeah.
You basically have to hire 2 FTEs just to solve that part. Second side of the platform is the supplier side. And the supplier side is really a catch-all term for everything that has to do with the third countries. So it could be a supplier in the simplest sense, someone like with a factory producing stuff. In EU terminology, they're called operators. But the platform actually works also with distributors or traders. So it's possible for you to just receive the data request because you were the one who provided the goods, but you're not the one who provides the data. So you can actually pass that as well. And then, of course, the supplier side also encompasses the sub-supplier side. So you are a supplier of a supplier, or even further down, so sub-supplier, I guess. So yeah, that's the supplier side. And on that side, the platform collects the data, you enter it directly on the platform, it validates that, it makes it very intuitive. So there's a lot of, indications.
And I have to give you the credits for that because we have validated, of course, our calculations. And just yesterday, we saw that the accuracy is 0.0001.
Percent difference, not the accuracy. The accuracy would be like 100 minus whatever you said. Yeah,
that's actually well done by you because you spent a lot of time on this.
Yeah, I mean, I am for the technology part. That maybe should have said that in the intro. I am primarily responsible for the technology side, but quite honestly, we wouldn't have been able to do it as quickly if it wasn't for the team as well. Because
we're gonna cut this. Continue.
yeah, but you know what I mean. It's not just me, man. Don't give me all the credit. That's not. Third party, third side to the platform is obviously the consultancy side, and the consultants, they come in all various shapes and forms. They can be within the European Union. They just help the importer out. They can be in third countries. They help the supplier out. They can support traders, they can support both parties, and they can basically hover between both sides. So they kind of have like a super user account, they're able to switch between these sides, generate reports on behalf of multiple importers if they want, act as the declarant or act as just the assistant, helping them with basically all their questions and sitting on the side of the importer doing all the work. So yeah, we've got quite a lot of...
and it's almost kind of an organism because the synergies we have with consultants are amazing. What I really like is that consultants are open and they say like, hey, look, I see this platform, but in my country, it would work better if you would do this and this. And usually within a few days, maximum a week, we have programmed that and it's in the system. And that actually makes that the system grows every week and only improves. It is actually those consultants who bring a lot of value to us, and we really try to give it back immediately.
Absolutely, yeah.
I usually get 2 questions when I speak with consultants. First thing is like, how solid is your company? Yeah, everybody in the startup in the CBAM field is kind of a startup, right? But we are already making money. We are not losing money. We don't have huge investments what we have to pay back, and we're only growing.
Yeah, so we're self-funded. I guess that is something that is good to add,
Yeah, exactly.
We bring our own expertise, our own people, and our own money to the table. And at the end of the day, it's, what was it, like 10 p.m. last night? Yeah. We're still, trying to solve stuff together because we really have skin in the game and we really think that this is the way to build it.
And the second thing is that they ask like, okay, is your platform audited? The problem is that there is no auditing for CBAM platforms yet. I mean, yesterday I made a joke to you, like we should actually start auditing CBAM auditing company because we really know what's necessary to make the right platform. And it's sometimes hard to give to provide them with an answer with that because we're going to certify our software. But I wonder if those certifications are only going to be there in 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, Word on the street is that this month, so it's early beginning of August. By the time this comes out, it'll be a little bit later. But the word on the street within the certification community is that in August there should be a draft of the first legislation regarding the verification.
That's good.
We're gonna see, and even then, just a draft, it will take probably another year before that's up and running.
So what is the best way for a consultant to verify our platform? What do we do?
To be honest, just take it for a field trip. Like take it for a spin.
And compare your own calculations.
Exactly. You've got these sheets. Yeah. You've got these sheets, and just go through the motions.
Exactly.
Pretend you are an importer. Import some goods. Pretend you are a supplier. Fill out your installation, which is basically the factory. Create your processes there. Attach the emissions, precursors if you want. Make it as complicated as your sheet is. Fill it all out. And send the data back. And then at the end of the day, you will get the two variables that are most important, the specific embedded emissions and the specific embedded emissions, and compare those findings. And of course, there's additional data you can check as well. We generate PDF reports. You can just check that out. And that's pretty much the simplest way. And that's exactly what you mentioned about the accuracy or the difference between what we got from the communication template on one hand, and our platform on the other. That's basically that we had a very small difference of less than 1 promille. So that's pretty good, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. So do you actually have something to say to the consultants out there that may have watched this and that may want to know a little bit more, may want to take our platform for a spin and just see what the hype is about?
Yeah. I think I do. I see actually at the moment two kind of business models amongst consultants. You have the consultants who are in between the supplier and the importer, and they take care for the actually all the work.
The full chain. I
exactly.
Guess.
Yeah. So they file the data in the Excel sheet, etc. For those consultants, you can make your life much easier if you're going to work with our software. What do you pay for it? Maybe €50 a month, right? It
depends. It's entirely based on how much you're doing as a business.
So but it will save you a lot of time.
Completely correct.
If you're a consultant who is like, hey, look, importer, you need to connect with your own factory because you know them best. I'm just going to inform you about CBAM. I'm going to control and check everything what you're going to submit, and you're more like an advisor. Then that is a way how to smoothen your proposition. Because working together with the software and showing your client that there's a much faster way to do this work is really a gift what you can give to both the importer and the supplier. If you're interested in Dubrink's software, feel free to book a demo with us. We can show you around, and if you like it, join us.
Yeah, absolutely. Other stuff that we may not have covered that you would like to go over? Ooh. Microphone.
Yeah, one of the things I would like to mention is that if you're out there and you're a CBAM expert and you want to join this podcast, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to join you and to discuss how CBAM is perceived in different countries around the world. We're based in Prague.
You're happy. Like, welcome to join us at the table.
Yeah,
we can do it remote. We can do all kinds of hybrids. We're going to join a couple of events later this year as well. So we may be able to put something together over there.
Yeah. So be welcome.
Yeah.
If there are people watching this and they have questions about CBAM, about our platform, about our entrepreneurial journey, anything, feel free to leave it in the comments. For now, we're going to close. I'm sure we will do this again. I wish you a lovely day and see you next time.
For tuning in to the Dubrink podcast. Remember, with the right insights and strategies, CBAM can be your competitive advantage. Join us next time for more expert advice and solutions.
We're done.